Hi everyone, let's start our guided tour using Zoom.
Thanks so much for joining us. Today we'd like to provide a guided tour of Zoom and some of the features and highlights you can use in your online class. It all begins in Canvas. Use Canvas to access Zoom. So to access Canvas, many of you know the login page. If you don't, it's my.uclaextension.edu. Enter your email address and password, and you'll find yourself at your dashboard in Canvas. Your dashboard will display all of the courses in which you are enrolled, either as an instructor, but also as a student. Today we'll be clicking on the Zoom training course, but you'll click on the actual course that you'll be teaching. In your course, you'll find Zoom as a menu option. If you don't see Zoom as a menu option, there may be a reason for that, because you need a UCLA email address to associate with your Zoom account. So the first step to take is to contact your program department if you need a UCLA email address. That will initiate some steps that we'll take and will result in that Zoom menu option being placed in your course. Once you click Zoom in your course, you will find an option to activate your account. It will walk you through the process of doing that. You'll confirm your email address, and then you'll return to this same Zoom area of your course. This has been set up so that you can schedule your meetings for your live classes. To schedule a new meeting, click the button at the upper right, Schedule a New Meeting. We are going to call this Monday class. You can enter a description if you'd like and set the date and the time. You can also set the duration. If your class is 3 hours, but you find that you end up going over that just a little bit, don't be alarmed, because Zoom will stay in the session and students will be able to join that meeting during that entire time that the duration is set. And your meeting will not be canceled automatically at the end of the duration time. The time zone is set, and if it's a recurring meeting that you'll be holding each week in your course, then you can set that here by clicking the recurring meeting option and then choosing the appropriate settings for your course. So if your course is meeting 11 weeks, then you could set it for 11 occurrences. Note the registration option here. Do not check that option. That will require students to provide their email addresses, which we do not want, because we can ask students for email addresses, but they are not required to share those with us due to privacy laws. So for this option, be sure to keep that unchecked. Many of the default settings here will be just fine. You can leave those as they are. For the video, host and participants both by default are set to off. And you can leave that, and you can enable those in your actual meeting, which we'll show you in a moment. For audio, leave both. That way your students can connect via phone if they should need to. You'll notice that require meeting password is set by default, and a password is already provided. Do leave that there as a security feature. And enable waiting room is also set by default. Leave that as well. That allows you to admit students into your meeting when you're ready. We will also show you that in just a moment. One additional feature you'll want to select is mute participants upon entry. This helps just reduce any background noise as everyone is joining, and then they can always test their audio once you're in your meeting. One last setting here is the alternative host feature. This is where you could type the email address of a co-teacher who is teaching along with you, so that that instructor will also have the option to start the meeting. You can also make them a co-host during the actual meeting, so that's an option as well, if you do not opt to add them as an alternative host here. Once you're ready, click Save, and return to the Zoom area of your course. You'll then see your Monday class there and all recurring meetings set up after that. You'll also see the start button appear for that first meeting. So I will stop sharing now because we actually want to move into Zoom and show you some of those features that you'll want to learn how to use for your course. And I'll pass that to my colleague, Carrie here.
Thank you, Leanna. So now we're in the Zoom window and in our meeting, and you can see we have the participants window open as well as the chat. And these buttons are at the bottom of your Zoom meeting, participants and chat. And you'll see at the top under participants, Netta is now in our waiting room. So when you begin your meetings, you already selected that your students will join in the waiting room first, and then you will need to add them to your class. Before you add your students, you will have the option in the Zoom chat to select everyone in the waiting room, and you can type a message to them. So we'll type a message to Netta, and then she will see that message. To admit Netta, all you have to do is hover over her name, and there will be an admit button. You can click that, and then she'll be joining us. When Netta joins, her audio will be muted, and her video will be automatically turned off. Hi, Netta. Thanks for joining us. For Netta or for you to turn on your audio, all you have to do is click on the mute or unmute button at the bottom of your screen. And to turn on your video, you can click Start Video. And that's a toggle button as well. You can start or stop your video at any time. Now that Netta's in our class, you'll see that she is listed in the participants. And as the host of your meeting, you have several features that you can use to engage your students and to interact with them. I'm going to hover over Netta's name, and you'll see that there's a More button. And when I click on that, I have the option to chat with Netta, just individually with her. I can stop her video if I feel that there's something distracting in her video that we may need to stop it for our class. I can put her in the waiting room. So maybe she was added, but I am not really ready for class yet, so I can move her back into the waiting room. Or if she is being disruptive or shouldn't be in our class at all, we can remove her altogether. So these are some features that Zoom has provided for security. When you are working with your students, you want to make sure that you're engaging them and gauging if they are able to follow your instructions and follow what you're teaching them, and just being able to communicate back and forth with you. So some of the ways that you can do that is using these nonverbal icons. And with these, you can ask a question and your students can click on yes or no. So I'll ask, has anyone here in our class used Zoom before? If you have, please click yes, and if you haven't, please click no. You'll notice when your students click on the answers, the icons will appear above, across from their name. And above the icon, you can also see a number, and that will indicate how many students actually answered the question that way. So you don't have to try to go through all of your students and count them, especially if you have a large class. Your students can then click on the yes icon again, and that will make it disappear. Or you can click the clear all button, and that makes them disappear as well. And you can ask another question. Your student will also have an option before the yes icon to raise their hand. So Netta, you can raise your hand if you have a question for me, and we would be able to see that. So next to Netta's name, you'll see a hand icon, and that indicates that she has a question. So you can set the stage for your students to be able to use these icons to communicate to you. And I'm going to clear this. There's also some more options for them if, thumbs up, thumbs down, applause, if they need a break, or if they just have to step away from their video for a minute. The other options to communicate when you have your videos on is a reactions button at the bottom of the Zoom window. And there are two options. You have applause, you can clap, or you can do a thumbs up. So if everyone understands and if everybody can see the reactions button at the bottom of your Zoom window, can you please give me a thumbs up? And you'll notice that the thumbs up icon appears right in the video window. When your students click these icons, they will display there and they'll automatically disappear. So you don't have to clear all, and your students won't be able to clear it either. So if they click it more than once, it will stay. Another way that you can interact with your students in a nonverbal way is through the chat. And we demonstrated how to chat in the waiting room. And now that everyone's in our class, we can select everyone in the meeting, and you can type a message, or you can also type individual messages to your students. So if you have a student that's maybe being quiet during this session, and they normally are talkative and they have great feedback, you can just reach out to them and nudge them along to participate some more, because everybody has great stories and feedback, so everyone will benefit. I noticed here that Netta has a question. How do you share your screen? Netta, that's an awesome question, and it's really easy. And this is a feature that you're going to use a lot in your classes. At the bottom of our Zoom window, there is a share screen button. And all you have to do is click on this button, and you will see a pop-up appear. And what this does is it indicates all the applications that you can share with your students. It's a little confusing and clunky looking, I think. So I'm going to walk you through just the basic features of this. The very first option in the top left corner is screen. And what this means is when you click on screen and then click on share, that will share your entire desktop. So you want to use that with caution, because anything that's on your desktop will be displayed for your students. So if you have email open, or if you have files open that you don't necessarily want your students to see, you'll want to close those if you're using the screen feature. The next option next to that is the whiteboard, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm going to move down, and what I like to do is, instead of looking at these graphics, because sometimes they just don't even make sense, they're a little confusing, I like to look at the words, and I like to look at the icon for the application. So right here I see it's a Zoom meeting, and it's in Google Chrome. So this was really our Zoom meeting within Canvas. So I know I'm going to use Canvas and I'm going to use Chrome, so I would click this as my option because I want to use Canvas. If I'm displaying something from the snipping tool that I happen to use, maybe I did a screen capture of an application for my students and I know it's right in that snipping tool, I would just click on that. So any of the applications that you have open for your course would be available, and you can click share. And what that does is it only shares that application and the information within it. So your students would not see your entire desktop. So you can have other applications open behind the scenes and your students won't see it. One thing to keep in mind, if you are going to play any videos or have audio that you need to share with your students. Let's say we're going to Chrome and I'm going to go to YouTube and play a video for my students. Not only do I need to select the application, but I also need to select these two checkboxes at the bottom: share computer sound and optimize screen sharing for video. And what that does is it enables the sound to go right through Zoom for your students and coordinate and just keep up with the video. So there's not going to be a lag. So you're not going to hear the audio and then see the movement. So it's pretty seamless. The optimized screen sharing is another feature that you'll want to select. So it just makes your videos much cleaner. If you're not playing a video, you'll want to deselect that. And if you don't need to use the computer sound, just deselect those when you're sharing. So let's take a moment and click on the whiteboard, and I'm going to share that. And when you are in the whiteboard, you have the option to click on text, and let's just type a question. So you can type questions for your students, or you can use this space for them to brainstorm ideas, or just as you're working through problems, going through case studies, different things. So the nice thing is that I can type as an instructor, but your students also have that capability as well, and that's through annotation. And you'll want to make sure that you have annotation on for your students so that they can utilize this and they can type their information. When you're done, you can always save your whiteboard, and that will show up in a folder. And you can see that my students here are utilizing this feature, and they're answering the question using text. The check mark is through stamp, so you can just select stamp and use check marks. So you can have a lot of features here. Matt is showing his arrow, so he can indicate what he's looking at. So this is a nice option. I'm going to stop sharing my whiteboard now and share my screen again. And now you should see my screen again. So that's all you have to do when you're working with your students and moving back and forth from different features in Zoom. It's very seamless. Another feature at the bottom of my screen is a record on this computer option. And right now you see it under a More button. And that's because my screen, I have other things open. So I'm actually going to close my chat and my participants, and you'll notice that the bottom of my screen changed. So now we can see the record button. So if you are missing buttons or something just doesn't seem right, always look for that More feature, and most likely that's where those buttons are. So when you want to record, you just click on record. You'll get a notification here to that you'll be recording, and just click continue. Now, during your class, when you begin recording, your students will hear an audio cue to let them know that the meeting is being recorded. And they'll also have a pop-up that displays to let them know visually that the meeting is being recorded. In addition, they'll be able to see in the top right corner of their screen record buttons, which you can see right now here. After you click on record, you have two new buttons that appear: pause and stop, and end recording. If you decide to take a break in the middle of your class, I know a lot of our instructors have 3-hour, 5-hour classes. So we want to make sure we're giving our students some breaks as well. Keep them engaged, keep them motivated, and let them have a break. And when you do that, you can easily just tell them to turn off their video, and they'll be returning in a few minutes, and set the time of when you want them to return. Pause your recording so that you're not recording that dead air. And then whenever you're ready to begin your session back with your students, make sure everyone's back, and you can let them know, okay, I'm going to start recording again, and just simply click on resume. And that's all you have to do. When you're done with your entire session, you can stop the recording, and just by clicking that, and you will get a little message at the top in this pop-up window that the recorded file will be converted to an MP4 when the meeting ends. So when you end your meeting, you'll see on your desktop a progress pop-up window, and it's converting that recording to an MP4 file. And when it's done, it will display where it is saved on your computer. You can upload that file directly into your Canvas course under videos, and that way your students will be able to go back and play back the recorded session. And that feature is really nice, especially if students might have any technical difficulties, or if they want to just listen or play back information that you had gone over in your class. They can use it for studying, for tests, and just as a refresher. So it's a nice feature. So I'm actually going to stop my share, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Leanna. And she's going to show you a few other options in Zoom that you can use to engage your students during your live class sessions.
Great. So let's talk about a couple of ways you can incorporate interactions into your course. So one of those is the polling feature in Zoom. So I'll share my screen. And you can now see that there's a polling feature at the bottom of the screen. And I have set up a couple of polls already beforehand, but note that polls can also be set up during a meeting as well. When I click the polling button, I then have the option to, I have a little caret here that lets me select the 2 polls that I uploaded previously. Right now, we want to select the Zoom survey. This is the one I want to launch right now. And it's just a quick way to engage with your students, offering a poll, get some quick feedback. It can be a good icebreaker at the start of the class, or just to check whether or not they're really grasping concepts as you move through your discussions, your live discussions. So right now I've started this poll, or I'm getting ready to. So if I click the launch poll button at the bottom, Zoom lets me know that the survey is in progress. And it has a little counter clock here as well. And it lets me know that attendees are viewing the questions and how many people have actually answered that. And so if Netta answers the poll for us, then we'll see her response because she's actually as a participant here. She is an expert Zoom user. I knew that though. But what's nice about this feature is that you can see live results in the moment. And then I can also choose end poll and then share the results out with everyone in the moment as well. So if I choose share results, now Zoom lets me know that the poll results are being shared. And this is what your students would then see on their screen. So we'll click stop sharing. And that's the polling feature. It's very streamlined and straightforward, easy to use. And I think you'll really enjoy using that in your course. But I don't want to neglect talking about breakout rooms. This is such a great tool built into Zoom for you to hold those live group sessions, for your students so that they can partner up, they can collaborate, they can really discuss ideas. And I recommend that you set the expectations or the guidelines before you move into the breakout rooms. Let them know, here's the structure. I want you to talk about this topic, and I'm going to put you in the breakout room for 15 minutes, and then we'll all come back to the main meeting room automatically and talk about the ideas that you discussed during your groups. So let's look at this feature. At the bottom, I'll click breakout rooms. I'll have the option here to assign the participants into however many rooms I choose. I can increase the number, and I can either have Zoom automatically assign participants to those rooms, or I can choose to manually set those groups up if I have certain groups in mind, specific people I want to pair up, or so forth. So I'll let Zoom choose that and create breakout rooms. So I see that Carrie and Matt are in breakout room 1, and Netta is all alone in breakout room 2. And I will go ahead and click open all rooms. That will immediately put everyone in the breakout rooms. But note here, before I do that, I've got some options. I can opt to move all participants into the breakout rooms automatically, which I do recommend. And then by default, allow participants to return to the main session at any time is set, so that your students could actually leave their meeting rooms if they needed to. You have the option to turn that on or off. And you can also set your breakout rooms for a specific amount of time. So I mentioned a moment ago for 15 minutes. So for right now, for demonstration, we'll just deselect that. And then we can also offer a countdown clock as the breakout room is closing. And you can set that to a different amount of time. So for 10 seconds here, we'll go ahead and set that for 10 seconds. And choose open all rooms. Note that as the host, I have the option then, while I remain in the main room, you'll now see just my video alone, and the others are all in their own breakout rooms. I can broadcast a message to them. And I can let them know that we'll return to the main room shortly. And click broadcast. And on the participant side, everyone in the breakout rooms received that broadcast message, and they also have the option to broadcast a message or send a message back to you as well. So for now, we'll click, well, we have the option to click the join buttons. As the host, or you as the instructor, you can move from breakout room to breakout room simply by clicking join and you'll be able to reassign yourself to the different breakout rooms, much like you would do in an in-person class where you walk from table to check in on your students, and you want to, stop by and say, how's it going here? What are you all talking about? How can I assist and provide support? And then you move on to your different groups until everyone then comes back to that main meeting room. So for now, we'll click Close All Rooms. And note that here at the bottom, I have the notification that all breakout rooms will close in a certain amount of seconds, that 10 seconds that I set. And now everyone is returning to the main meeting room together. So once we've all returned, that's where we can engage and talk about what our small groups discussed. That's the breakout room feature, and I definitely recommend it. So there's one last element here along the bottom that I think is important to point out in Zoom, and that is the End button. This is where you as the instructor would click End and have the option to end the meeting for everyone in the group. And once you do that, it's immediate. Or you have the option to leave the meeting, but you would be prompted to assign someone else to be the host because a host is required for the meeting. But note that your students, instead of seeing an End button here, they see the Leave option. So they can leave the meeting when they're ready. And you can let them know, here's how you leave the Zoom meeting. You just click the button and you've left the meeting. So that's really the overview of Zoom here. And we hope this has been helpful for you. And we would like to offer some best practices and tips for you as well. Thanks for joining us. And I'll pass that to my colleague, Matt, for those best practices and tips.
Hi everyone, let's talk about the best practices in Zoom now. First, what things you should pay attention before you start your meeting. Dress to impress. While it might be tempting to wear comfy clothing since you are working remotely, consider wearing work-appropriate clothing to any Zoom meeting you attend. Don't forget, your colleagues and students will be expecting you to have a professional appearance in your live meeting. So, dress for your Zoom meeting the way you would for an in-person meeting. Adjust your lighting and frame your camera correctly. Make sure there is enough light in the room so that your video isn't dark and unwatchable. Also, frame your camera in a way that feels natural and allows you to look at the camera. And sit at eye level in front of your camera lens. Be aware of your surroundings. Be mindful of what may appear in the background of your Zoom video conference, such as a pile of laundry on the floor. Make sure your background is professional and work appropriate. Practice using Zoom in advance. Test your internet connection, audio, and video to make sure they work properly. Understand the various Zoom features to ensure your meeting runs smoothly. Prepare your course materials in advance. If you plan to share content during the meeting, make sure you have presentation files and links ready to go before the meeting begins. Close any unnecessary documents or tabs in your web browser. Connect 15 minutes before the meeting start time to check your audio, video, and internet connection. Consider using Google's Chrome web browser for the most optimal connection. Consider using an external microphone or USB-connected headset for better quality audio. Consider placing a lighting source in front of you for clear video quality. Have a backup communication plan ready in case if you have trouble connecting with remote participants. Examples of a backup plan include an extra laptop, tablet device, or a mobile phone device you can use to start the Zoom meeting. Also, keep in mind, you can always communicate with your students on Canvas too. Let's take a look at the best practices during your meeting. Set the tone for your course and let your students know how to communicate with you during your live session. Let students know when and how they can get your attention during a meeting. Will you be checking the chat window? Should they unmute themselves to ask questions? Should they hold questions until the end of a presentation or during a break? You also have the option to click the Mute All button at the bottom of your participants window, in case if your students forget to mute their microphones. Also, spend some time to review your course syllabus with your students. Ensure all participants can see and hear each other at the start of the meeting. Look into the camera. Direct eye contact into the camera gives students the impression that you are looking at them and listening to them, which creates a more engaging environment. Mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Most microphones can pick up minor background noises like typing, coughing, and loud sneezing. These sounds can easily distract students from learning. Think about your actions on the camera. Always remember that everyone in the meeting can see you. Pay attention to distracting movements or behaviors that can disrupt the class. For example, using your phone or biting into a sandwich. And now, after a meeting, send a Canvas announcement or post a page in your Canvas course that summarizes the lesson. Consider including documents or websites that were discussed and shared during the live meeting. I hope you will find these tips helpful for your online live meetings.